Welcome to the Real Estate Marketing Podcast. My name is Jerome Lewis. I'm your host for today. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast where we talk marketing, tech, business, and leadership. We talk these things for real estate agents, real estate investors, and real estate entrepreneurs. The Real Estate Marketing Podcast is a podcast that has two purposes. Purpose number one, Thurben, to educate and inform our audience and listeners. Purpose number two, Thurben, to spotlight you, your business, your service, or your product in a way that provides value to you, including market exposure and content creation. With that, we have a very special guest, Thurben Jean. Is it Jean or Jean?
Jean.
Okay. Thurben Jean James is from St. Croix. He is an author, ghostwriter, founder of Alchemist Academy, a school that serves children from kindergarten through 12th grade, focused on teaching children entrepreneurship. And he is also an investor. Thurben, I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you had a short bio. It wasn't a lot to go into, but some things jumped out to me. You're an author, a ghostwriter, and the founder of Alchemist Academy. Tell us how you got to where you got to today. Take us on a journey and what led you into. This is a real estate podcast, and also what connected us was books. So I want to know how you got involved in real estate, and then I want to talk about some books and some authorship.
Sure. So do you want the short answer or the long answer?
I want the long answer.
Sure. My life kind of started, so from like 0 through 18, I was just doing what every kid is supposed to do, which for me was get good grades, stay out of trouble, and that was it. I just did what my parents told me to do. And at 18 years old, I graduated high school, and I knew intuitively, I knew I didn't want to go to college because I just didn't know what I wanted to do at all. But I ended up going because, like every, kid, the conversation is you're going. And so went to college around 18, 19. I'm just having like a realization like, man, I want to get rich. And so, because at the time I'm driving this old beat down Mercedes my grandma handed down to me. And I was like, I would drive the Mercedes around and I would drive my parents' cars, like the Toyota and a Suzuki. And I was like, oh, this Mercedes feels different. I want to own something like this one day, right? And so, it, kind of sparked with that question, like, how do I get rich? And then uh, there was a girl that went to my high school that I liked because she was pretty. I would just see her around. I never spoke to her prior, but the reason I knew her is because we had a mutual friend. And so one particular day on Instagram, I just decided to, slide in the DMs because the brother's trying to holler. And so um, I started talking to her, and I built a relationship with her, and she was the first wealthy person that I had ever met in my life. And so,
Mhm.
and I'm talking like real wealthy, like private jets, Ferraris, Teslas, nice home, like that's the life, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, like at the time, like, okay, what are y'all doing that, I'm not doing? Like, so I build a relationship with her over time. And then eventually one day she tells me to go read this book. And I'm like, okay, let's just read this thing. It's called Dying to Be Me by Anita Morjani. And
Say that
basically,
again.
Dying to Be Me by Anita
Okay.
Morjani. And so that book, just to sum it up, is it's basically about a lady who's like about to die. She has like cancer or something like that. And then she has like a spiritual experience, and then she comes out on the other side of that fully healed and transforms her entire life. She becomes financially free. And it kind of like got me thinking like, okay, there's hope for me. And then after that one book that I read, it led to me reading more. So I read like 8 or 10 books that first year that I met her. And like some of the books that I was reading at the time was like, Think and Grow Rich, uh, Rich Dad Poor Dad, stuff like that. And then I just got like super obsessed with like knowledge and like learning about wealthy people, how to get rich. And so the following year, I ended up reading 75 books. I read 70 the year after that. And during that time frame, I'm trying other different like businesses. Like I tried network marketing. Like with Amway, I did like door-to-door sales, like life insurance. I was just trying stuff,
Hmm.
'cause I'm in my head like, man, I'm gonna do something to get rich, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then during that time, a lot of people would ask me the same question over and over, which was, dude, like, how is it that you read so much? Like, and like, I had like 1 month where I read like 33 books in a month. The most I've ever read in a year is 107, like books. And so people would just keep asking me that question. And so it got me thinking like, okay, here's a problem that people have. Let me create a solution. And problems equal money. So that's kind of how my brain came up with my first book, How to Read 50 Books in a Year Like a CEO. And then with real estate, I happened to be reading a book by Grant Cardone at the time on multifamily investing. That was like my first intro to real estate, really. Um, so I ended up reading that book. I saw an ad for a real estate event near me. Went there, did a and turned into their mentorship program, and that's kind of the long story of how I got into real estate.
Okay. So a few things jumped out to me, and I want to hear your perspective because you were talking about the woman when you slid in her DMs. You mentioned I built a relationship, and we hear that all of the time, but it's like, and it can be hard to define. But I would like to hear from your perspective. How does a person actually build a relationship? What are some practical things that they can do to start to maintain and initiate a relationship? And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to be necessarily sliding in the DMs like you were. We might be trying to build a business relationship or a friendship relationship, whatever. So I want to hear from you. What are some things that you advise people so they can initiate and maintain healthy relationships?
I mean, just very simple things. Like I think that
Mhm.
people take for granted, so like saying, "Hey, Merry Christmas,
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving to your family. Hey, I saw that you did XYZ trip or whatever.
Okay.
How did that go for you?" You just have conversations with people just casually. And sometimes, it'll lead to a whole, you know, hour conversation. Maybe it doesn't, but you just, periodically just keep touching people and then showing up for them, like, but just even like not only just in the bright moments, but in the bad
Mhm.
moments. Like there were some times, like she has like a health issue, so just literally checking on her while she's in the hospital, like little stuff like that. Like just being there, the ups and the downs of life, like with people, and just genuinely caring about them and knowing little details about them and their family. Arranging times to meet up with them, if assuming that geographically you can do that, of course, right? But, just little things like that and just, doing it over time consistently and just being authentic.
Thanks for sharing that. So one of the ways we connected is we connected through a real estate event. Uh, I don't know what, I guess it's a mastermind or a networking event. We can call it that. And we were in the same room, and you mentioned that you wrote books. I was like, oh, I write books too. Why don't you come to a podcast? So we both write books. We're both in real estate. I would like to hear you share your insights. You talked about it a little bit. You were like, people kept asking me a question, and that's what led me to write my new book. What is that process like, right? Or write your book? What is that process like? You had the problem, and then you're like, why did you choose to put it in a book versus some of the other ways that you could deliver that information?
I mean, there's a few different reasons. Like I just love adding value to people and serving people, and I felt like for me, rather than have a whole 15-minute conversation with someone about the same question that I'm gonna get over and over, just hey, reference this, like,
Mhm.
hey, just go check out my book, bro. Like, I don't have time for this, right? That's
Mhm.
part of it, and then also too, just and it wasn't like a overnight, like, oh, one person came to me and said this
Right.
question, and so I wanted to like write it immediately. No, this was like over the course of 2 years that I
Mhm.
consistently got this question, and even today I get it, but that's partly why. So like understanding, too, like I understood that. Also, I understood like who my avatar was. So like the people that would ask me that question were generally entrepreneurs or people looking to like just develop themselves, right? Those are the consistent themes I saw in the people that would ask me about that. And then two, just it's a form of passive income, and I do love passive income. And then I think too, just the amount of leverage that it gives me, like just to do other things that are completely unrelated. Because like I think one thing a lot of people don't think about when they're talking to people is like just getting social capital. Like people are what move the world, not money. All the opportunities that I get is because I have relationships with people. So that's kind of how I look at it.
We have similar stories. The reason why I published my book is because I got tired of seeing the same thing over and over again, and I just wanted to give people a reference. I wanted to help, but I'm an introvert, and I let people know that, like, hands down, I'm an introvert. If I don't have to talk, I don't want to. So I start creating resources, marketing resources, and I learned that I could put a lot of my information in the book, and I started to do that. It was something tangible that people could touch, hold, and reference at any time without me being there. So it was like me duplicating myself in a way without me actually being there.
Hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that. So let's talk about a little bit of real estate. So you mentioned like Cardone, right? Grant Cardone.
Yep.
And you mentioned he has a mentorship program. You said you got involved in that. Is that correct?
No, he had
Okay.
a book on multifamily that I was reading at
What?
the time.
A what?
A book on
Book
multifamily.
on multifamily. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about he had a book on multifamily and you decided to like why multifamily and real estate versus some of the other opportunities out there.
I mean, I kind of like the idea of just big assets. I don't know. I
Mhm.
don't really think small most of the time. Like,
Right.
so to me, it just had a certain appeal to it. It's like, ooh,
Mhm.
multifamily. I was like, because everybody buys a house at some point. Like, so to me, that felt like I'm gonna do that at some point. I'm gonna get me a house. That's nothing special. But multifamily, okay, this is off in the distance. This sounds like a challenge. Let me learn about this. Also too, just the like the pros of multifamily, like economies of scale, um, you know, and also the fact that you can basically increase the value of a property just by increasing operations, doing little renovations to make it more valuable. So I think that I like more where I feel like with residential you don't have as much control over the value of the property personally. It's more based on comps, and also you don't get as much cash flow. Also,
100%. So this like earlier you mentioned Avatar. So I'm going to take this. I want you to talk about because I was thinking, I'm like, man, nobody wants to read 50 books, but that's not true. The right avatar will, because I was interested in what you said, but I know I'm a go getter. I want to be better. I want to grow. So that's easy for me. And I'm thinking about other people. I'm like, they're not the avatar. They don't want to be better. They don't want to read books. That's not the right avatar. So I like the fact that you mentioned you were like, I knew my avatar. And I help people understand marketing. You have to know your avatar because not everybody's going to want to do or want what you offer. And I know there are going to be some people, they hear 50 books, they're like, no, I don't want to do it. They don't even want to read one book. So it's so important that you explain Avatar. And I want you to share your insights on Avatar, and I want you to share with us how we can find an avatar within the multifamily space, right? Because we think about the buildings and the asset, but there's still a certain avatar that we should be we should be going after as an example. So could you talk about that?
sure. I mean, when it comes to like a multifamily avatar, I would first start off with like the thing I think most people forget about is just like self-awareness. And what I mean by that is that like who are the people that are already around you? Like the people that I hang with, are completely different than the people you hang out with, right?
Mhm.
And so you start there, like first starting with just your immediate circle. Okay, like what type of people am I attracting? For me, I'm just doing this for an example. The people that I attract are generally real estate investors, business owners, and some pretty wealthy individuals. Those are generally the people I hang around. I don't really hang out with middle class as much or, lower than that. I just don't. My mind doesn't operate that way, but generally those are the people I hang with. And then so you start there, like just observing who's around you. And then also too, you next ask like, hey, what are their problems? Some of them might be like, hey, a constant problem I have is I'm looking for capital. That's one problem that, they have. Maybe some of them are like, I'm just looking for a great deal. Some of them are like, hey, I'm just trying to find a way to limit my taxes. Some are like, hey, I just want to, increase my income or my passive income. So you just gotta, look at people and determine who are you attracting, like just naturally. And then if you're not getting the person you want to serve, okay, then next would be where does that person that you're looking for, where are they? Like what type
Mhm.
of events do they attend? What type of personality do they have? What's their like, they generally fit certain characteristics, right? So like they might be maybe super wealthy people, at least from my observations, for the ones I hang around, they're generally married, they have kids, and maybe have a stable job. Okay, cool. And then so start going where those people go. Some of them are attending, BNI groups, business events, real estate events. And then so you hunt them down and then you go have conversations with them, find out what their problems are, and then go serve them.
Thank you for sharing that. Because my next question was going to be, where do I go? Like, where do I find these people? And something that always comes up for people trying to get involved in multifamily is, where do I go? Like, where do I meet these people? How do I network? I can't even think somebody would want to invest or, give me money to invest. So I would like to hear you talk about that. Like, how did you become who you are and you go around and you work these rooms and network with people without having those dominant thoughts like that?
And repeat that question again for me.
Sure. So you have the mindset where you will go and you will network with the appropriate people, the wealthy people, or people that want to invest with you or invest in a deal. How did you develop that mindset? Like, and what tips do you have for someone that's trying to develop that mindset or fathom the fact that somebody might want to be involved or invest with them in real estate? That clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, generally for me, like the books that I've read,
Mhm.
my personal upbringing, I think also helps me a lot too, because I feel very
You go
comfortable
deeper on that?
around. Yeah, so most people don't know about me. So I grew up like in a church community. And
Okay.
so I was constantly in situations where I have to speak to an entire congregation, maybe 300, 500 people by myself, microphone, or maybe I have to speak loud enough to talk to these 300 people without a mic. And those were situations I was put in at 12, 13 years old. So talking to people one on one, that's easy for me because
Mhm.
I'm used to congregations, right? Even
Mhm.
like little stuff like being in like being a solo in the school play and all that stuff. Like so those little I think aspects of just being comfortable around people, just to talk with them and, feel like you belong in the room. I would also say just I would say the books that I've read have helped me a lot too, just understand like just the language that they use because like a lot of times you'll have like these super wealthy people, they're gonna use certain terms, and they'll sometimes expect you to know what those terms mean. So
Mhm.
just understanding the lingo of of wealth, I would say, is another part. Like just understanding the language, so that way when they're talking to you, you can have a full on conversation in their language. And then also I would say just put yourself in those rooms, even take a friend with you, or and I've been like really fortunate to have a lot of people just be like, "Hey, I'm going to this event. I think you should tag along with me." And so you feel a little less anxiety when when you got a friend of yours that is already in those rooms. Um, and then also just getting the reps in. Like there is no better teacher than experience. You're gonna learn more and just being in the room with those individuals than you are, thinking about it and trying to mentally prepare for it.
Yeah. And so something that you said that jumps out to me is you said people just say, "Hey, Thurben, why don't you come along to this event?" But I think it's a little bit more to that. Like you've been preparing and letting the universe or God, whoever, you've been letting them know, I want this. So you're attracting those opportunities and they come up for you a little bit easier because you're there and your brain and your mind, whatever we want to call it, is on that frequency. So I want people to understand that too. Like you're saying that you're saying that I'm fortunate and yeah, we all got some luck, but I think that um you've prepared, and the more we're prepared, the luckier we get. So
Mhm.
yeah, I wanted to. So I want to hear about you've been an entrepreneur for a while. You mentioned Amway and some of the some of the common ones that we know about. You are the founder of Alchemist Academy, a school that serves children and it teaches them entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what entrepreneurship is, and tell us how you teach students how to get involved in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, so man, I mean, entrepreneurship itself is just ultimately about service, like
Mhm.
to people, of like serving people with their problems, like finding a need in the marketplace and then creating a solution for that avatar. I would say is like, and then also it has to be done profitably. You don't want to make a business that you lose money on or you're breaking even. It also has to be profitable with what you do. That's kind of how I would define entrepreneurship. And then in terms of like teaching kids, so the way I have my school structured is we have an academic partner that handles the curriculum, and they have courses just designed just to teach kids that, as well as some other websites we can use to help the kids out as well, like Mind Valley.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. What inspired you to start this school?
My mentor, my mentor, Aubrey Grimsley, she owns two private schools of her own down in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. And I had several conversations with her about it, like why she does it. And that kind of sparked me. And also, to what really got me into it was I think about me in college, like,
Mhm.
you know, and also me in high school, like just knowing if I had known what I knew now about the world, like the landscape of
Mhm.
like the other options besides just going to school, I maybe probably would have, started in real estate sooner than, you know. So I think about just making the school to serve that younger me, pretty much.
Okay, and so there's something going on with alchemists. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
What do you mean by
The,
that?
the term alchemist, right? So you got Alchemist Academy, which is a
Yeah.
school, and then we haven't mentioned it on an episode yet, but you have Alchemist Nation.
Yep.
Can you tell me why you picked alchemist, that particular word?
Yeah, so alchemy is about, transforming things into gold. It's like a form
Okay.
of science. And like I like it because like really entrepreneurship is like you're molding yourself into gold, like because your business isn't going to be amazing out the gate unless you probably already have experience in it. And so alchemy is about, transforming the individual or your situation into like metaphoric gold, like
Okay.
whatever that may be. Maybe for you, that might be, I don't know, for maybe people listening, that might be a portfolio of multifamily properties, maybe just a portfolio of single family or being a billionaire, whatever that goal may be for you.
Okay. Now, this is going to lead us back to multifamily. So, Alchemist Nation, tell us about Alchemist Nation. Tell us what you got going on there. You said it's a mastermind. Share with us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Alchemist Nation, it's a community-based company that's focused on building 100 millionaires inspired to build 100 millionaires. And so we do that through teaching real estate and business. And so, like our company on our website, we have a lot of free resources for people. Like we have courses on teaching wholesaling, fix and flips, uh, life insurance, like different wealth strategies, how to mitigate taxes, and so on. And also, like, we have like our Saturday, we have a call called the 52 Weeks of Wealth, where we go over one principle that you can apply to your business and life, to get you towards being a millionaire. Um, and it's been a real blessing for me just to be a part of the mission.
Tell us for anybody interested in becoming part of the Alchemist Nation, how we can learn more about it. Do we reach out to you? Is there a website? Tell us how we can get access or
Yeah, so
qualify.
we
Mhm.
yeah, so we have our website, alchemistnation.com. That's one place you could go to, or you could reach out to me directly as well. And, I could put you in touch with any resources we have that can, tailor to your situation.
And so you have, I got to get me a signed copy, but you have a book, right? You've written more than one book, and you mentioned like you're a ghostwriter. So tell us about your book. And then I also would like to hear about like ghostwriting and the services. But first, tell us about your book.
Yeah, so my first book, How to Read 50 Books in a Year Like a CEO, it basically just goes over the mindset of how to read 50 books in a year. Like mathematically, it's just one book a week, but people make it harder than it sounds. And it really just comes down to like the way you think about reading. Like the people that struggle with reading, they always complain about it. And also too, I tell people like if you don't like reading, it's because you're reading the wrong books. That's what I tell people because if you're reading something that you love and you're gonna be in it, like you're gonna be fully immersed in it. And so, I just think it's a mentality that I have that has allowed me to read that many books per year.
Thanks. I appreciate you sharing that because I was just recently had a disagreement with a colleague. And he was like, nobody reads books. I was like, people do read books. I read books all of the time. I have no problem picking up a book and reading it. And what you just said, I'm going to take with me forever. If you don't enjoy reading, you're reading the wrong books. Outside of
Mhm.
being completely lazy, but if you don't like it, you're reading the wrong books. I'm telling you, all of the books that I enjoy, I get right through them with no problem. Or when I want to learn something, I get through that book. No problem. I sit down, I make the time and I get through it. So it's a mindset. I really appreciate you sharing that. If you're not enjoying reading, you're not reading the right books. It's just like a movie or something you don't like, right? You don't
Yep.
like it, don't watch it. Put it down. You're reading the wrong books. You're watching the wrong movie. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, tell us about ghostwriting. What is it? Right? What it is. I'm a huge advocate for books on this podcast. We create books for real estate and marketing and all kinds of stuff. So tell us what ghostwriting is and how you can help people with some ghostwriting services and some of the stuff that you do.
Yeah, so simply put, a ghostwriter, like the name implies, is like someone is writing a book for you, but they don't take credit for it, basically. So, like, your name is on the title of the book. There's no mention of the person who wrote it, and you have a book created. And so with that process, they help you create the cover of the book. They edit and revise it so that, grammatically it's correct, the pages flow and everything. And also like, getting it made into like an audio book and just helping you, get started in the uh, self-publishing space if you want to go that route, or
And
go into.
how do we go about contacting you to learn more about your ghostwriting services?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me directly. Either, I mean, best way to get a hold of me is just text me at
Uh,
813-298-4631.
uh, all right. And your book. I'm supposed to be getting a signed copy. I'm going to do that today. How can the audience get access to your book? What are they? And you got more than one book, right?
Yeah.
So tell us how we can get access to the first one. That's the staple. And then tell us about how we can learn about some of the other books you've done.
Yeah, so I mean, you can just look up my name in Amazon. My second book is a follow-up to the first one. It's How to Read 100 Books in a Year Like a CEO. So that one's pretty obvious.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I always say the
Go
first
ahead.
one. That one has the foundation to do the 100.
All right. Earlier you were talking about reading books and you were like reading the right books. And I know some of the audience is like, well, what books do I what do I read to start to learn their language? And you got to learn the avatar and stuff like that. But are there any books that jump out to you? You're like, you know what? I really embraced this. And now I understand this particular thing about being wealthy or this particular thing about being involved in multifamily. Are there any books that jump out to you?
Ooh, I mean, that is a loaded question. Because it just depends what you're trying to learn about. So myself personally, I read a lot of different like genres. So I read like books on self-help. I read some books on business, investing. I read psychology books, neuroscience. But personally, I mean, if you're like just strictly focused on like just getting the internal game of wealth, I would probably start with like a book like Think and Grow Rich. Uh, I even think like Ed Mylett's book, The Power of One More, is a pretty solid one. Um, and then like just hardcore like business books. There's some like great people like Russell Brunson, Myron Golden, Grant Cardone has some pretty good books as well. Patrick Bet David. There's some. It just depends what you're looking for, really.
Okay.
But
All
those
right,
are places
Thurben,
to start.
this has been excellent. I appreciate your time today. Um, how can listeners find out more about you online? How can they get in touch with you to learn about you, see what you got going on, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, they could, look me up on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. Either platform works.
Okay. And this, if you could close this out with one word, no explanation, what word would that be?
Service.
Service. Okay. All right, Thurben, this has been excellent. I appreciate your time, and I'm going to close this down.